In a world that often pulls us apart, More in Common brings us back to what matters. Hosted by Gerren Taylor and Keith Richardson, this isn't your average podcast. It's a challenge to think deeper, question louder, and grow further. At More in Common, we work with NFL teams, tech companies, and professionals across industries to improve communication and foster compassion. And with a focus on emotional intelligence, we aim to bring a wealth of experience to help you navigate the complexities of human connection. We've never been more connected and yet more isolated. We want to explore the roots of that tension and offer a way back to what we all need: real human connection. Enjoy the show.
Welcome back. Hello, friends.
Dude, I love the hat.
Yeah.
I think it's a good look for you, man.
Thank you, sir. This beautiful brown cowboy hat that I got on is courtesy of my friends at Ruta del Baracho here in Tijuana. They let me borrow it. I don't know if they're getting it back.
I don't know if you should give it back.
Right?
I mean, yeah, or you should ask for it. Like, let's not condone just, hey.
I'm gonna go in and be like, so this is mine now, right, guys?
It's got my head on it. Yeah. I didn't wash my hair. I didn't wash my hair 3 days. Wore it every day. Do you want it back now?
Are you sure? Because it's got some Gerren imprint in there. It's my DNA.
This has got some guarantee odor in here.
Not for nothing though. It does make me feel more like rugged.
No. It's just a good look.
Yeah,
it's just a good look.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
You wear it well. Yeah.
It brings me back to my roots. I'm just kidding. I'm from the city.
Whatever those roots are. Yeah. I'm from Oakland. If it brings you back there, we all have a very skewed perception of Oakland.
Yeah. Well, man, it's all about how you see the truth. Yo, you remember
it is all about how you see the truth. What a segue, Gerren. What a segue.
I'm a pro.
Yeah.
Do you remember in 2015 the dress meme? Like, this is another way.
Yeah.
I love talking about how people.
It's funny. The shirt kind of reminds me of that dress, not on purpose, but like it had lines across it, all that.
Starting it again, yeah. The blue dress versus gold dress meme. For those who don't remember, there was a Tumblr post that started the internet afire as people discuss whether or not the dress they saw in the picture was blue or gold, and everyone was absolutely convinced that what they saw.
Convinced. The truth. It's all the truth, man.
I don't think that's helpful for us when we get so dug in. But that's what we're going to talk about today, in general. Is the elusiveness of the truth, perception versus reality, if you will.
Where should we start?
Well, I know you've had some.
This is a heavy. This is such a fun topic,
right?
Yeah,
especially it's now. I mean, the less fun part about it is that people have this has serious impacts when it comes to our real world, right? Like, I feel like in our political divide right now, everyone sees their side as being the truth tellers and the other side as being the liars, and I feel like
this is ultimately the sadness of it, is everybody thinks that their truth is the truth, and we even celebrated it. I mean, I haven't heard it in a while, but I'm not like the most I'm not the most reliable source on pop culture, but there was a strong period of time where it was like, you tell your truth. Is that still a thing? Like, do people still do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is my truth. This is my truth. But yeah, let's talk about it, because I think it's really important to distinguish this. If we're actually gonna move, like going back to what Dadrian said about conversation moving the culture forward, if we're going to do that, which we happen to believe that is true just the same. Unpacking this reality of the human experience is way more important than most things that we talk about. If we go back a few episodes when we started talking about suitcase terms, Marvin Minsky, right? The idea that we pack in all of our own stuff into terms and then we end up having a conversation about something and we're actually having two different conversations. Truth, by definition and by experience, is a suitcase term. What do I mean by that? There are 5, according to dictionary.com, 5 definitions of truth. There's the body of real things, events, and facts. That's actuality. There's the state of being the case. That is fact. There's a transcendent, fundamental, or spiritual reality. This is capital T truth. Right? You'll hear this a lot from people who are very religious or have strongly held religious beliefs. Like, that is truth. And this is a good example of where truth often breaks down when you have atheists who will argue with very religious people over the facts of existence. It's different conversations. Literally 2 different conversations. One's lowercase truth, one's capital T truth, right? This is an experience. Go ahead.
Let's break that down, because this is how I've also heard it a lot, right? Big T truth versus little T truth. What is objective truth versus what is subjective truth? So, like, touch on that a little bit so that people who aren't familiar with the concept get a little taste.
Yeah, this kind of goes back to the what is your truth? But this isn't just capital T, little t, right? You go back to that first definition of truth, and it's the body of real things. So the things that you have experienced, events, both in your life and external to your life, and facts, right? That's your actuality. So we can capitalize the T and say it's your truth because events in your life that are tied to a spiritual recognition of certain things, which at a philosophical level, when we think about Eastern philosophies, you think about Dostoevsky, Nishitani, they talk about the need to break away from the Socratic philosophical method of all we have to do is align on facts and we will all come to an agreement, right? Let's just have a scientific conversation. Well, it's missing a massive experience that people have in life that is at the spiritual level. And that spiritual experience is also part of the formula of truth.
Right.
And this is where we get into your truth versus my truth. And, you know, it's currently my truth that my video keeps freezing. I don't know if Riverside is going to upload an unfrozen version so that the people who are watching it aren't seeing me freeze, because that's what they're supposed to do. But here we are, right? And so really what this all comes down to is the conclusions that we draw from the data that we're presented, right? It is all about the conclusions that we draw. And that is what we are defining for ourselves as the truth. We differ in what we perceive. We differ in what we experience. And oftentimes, because we're talking about dialogue moving the culture forward, it is our conclusions that we're arguing over rather than coming to an agreement on facts. And those conclusions as well are forward-looking. My God, how much do we hear on TV? This is what's going to happen. No one can predict anything. And yet that conclusion becomes the basis of our debate or discourse. And as a result, we can't agree. Now, it becomes wildly problematic when we can't agree on just fundamental facts. Right? Like, one of my favorite examples to represent all of this is if I put a piece of paper in front of you and I draw a 6 on it. To me, it is a 6 because that's what I drew. But to you, it is a 9.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, my truth is that's a 6. Your truth is that that's a 9. Fundamental fact is it is both.
Right.
Schrodinger's number, right? Like it is both at the same time. So we have to agree on, for this purpose, what purpose does this number serve in our dialogue? Like what purpose? And can we come to an agreement on the fact that we're looking at it? Can you come to my side of the table and say, okay, we're both going to talk about this as it's a 6, or I'm going to come to your side of the table and we're both going to talk about this as a 9. What we tend to do is be like, the conclusion is that this is absolutely definitively a 6, and you're saying, no, this is absolutely definitively a 9. And we're just arguing over, yeah, therefore you're dumb.
Yeah.
When in reality, I'm arguing my perception. We're not arguing the fact of what it is for the purpose of the conclusions that we want to come to together.
I feel like this also happens a lot in today's world. You know, thankful for the internet in some ways. Also, don't know if we were ready for it. But when we see,
we have not evolved for the internet.
Yeah, don't get me started on AI.
Yeah.
But when you see police videos, right, body cam videos released, we're all watching the same video. We're all watching the same actions take place.
Yeah.
But what people see or extrapolate from said videos can be absolutely, totally different.
Dude, what an awesome real world example of how this really plays. And it plays really nicely into the why. Right? There's a lot of information. There are a lot of facts that exist. And I can guarantee you I can guarantee with 100% certainty that there is not a single person on this planet that knows every single fact that exists.
Right.
It's just not possible. Our brains can't comprehend it. We talk about this in every episode. Our brains are wired for survival. So what do we do? What does that mean? We've talked about bias before. Bias is this whole conversation is a great example of biases and how they present to simplify our environment so we can draw conclusions and move forward in the best way for us to survive in a peaceful, self-reliant state. Like we're here to, I don't want to be stressed all the time, angry all the time. And those who are inherently probably going to have shorter lifespans, right? So do we want that? No, our brain does not want you to do that. Those things serve their purpose. We've talked about this in emotional awareness. But biases, there are 188 known biases that have been cataloged, right? We've talked about a few of them.
Right.
In this particular case, we think about like the base rate fallacy. The base rate is the base rate of occurrence of a thing, right? How many people on average use cell phones? Or how many people on average watch football? The base rate fallacy is drawing a conclusion without knowing what the base rate is based on my personal experience. My entire family likes football. Therefore, everybody likes football. My wife and I have this conversation constantly, right? It is actually, if we take the most watched sporting event in the United States every year, that is the Super Bowl. I think this past year's Super Bowl, was it 135 million people tuned in?
Thanks, Kendrick.
Yeah, right? To the halftime show, right?
Yeah.
135 million. There are 320 million people in the United States. That is less than half of the population. So in fact, it's statistically more probable that you don't watch football than that you do.
Mm-hmm.
But my family watches it, so I draw the conclusion that everybody does. My friends, so the people I surround myself with common interests, watch football, so everybody must watch football. That's a base rate fallacy. Our brains take the information in our environment and draw conclusions and simplifications so we can move about the world, right? Selective perception, right? I'm going to pull out my trusty flashcards on bias, right?
Right.
So we can talk about
the
processing of stimuli or information that positively relates to our life experience or prior held beliefs. And we disregard information that have a negative relationship to our prior held beliefs or experiences. Right? Our brain actually ignores information. Ignores it. So we can draw conclusions and move about the day.
Yeah.
So
this is a dangerous one, but it definitely sounds like it's something that I can relate to. Yeah.
Like we can't know all the facts because our brain doesn't let us.
It also just allows me to understand, I think, a little bit more about, like I've said earlier, about people that watch videos, like police interaction videos. Like your selective perception of what you think an officer should or shouldn't be doing will affect how you see what's happening in that video.
Absolutely. One of my great example I like to use, because I'm a football fan and the odds are you're not, right? But if I'm watching a football game with my team in it, I am more likely to think that they are overflagged or penalized versus the other team because of this missed call or that missed call or this bad call or that bad call. What I'm not indexing is when the other team gets a missed call or a bad call, right? I'm not actually paying attention to those things. So then at the end of the game, I draw the conclusion.
Unless you're the Chiefs.
My team got screwed by the officials. Yeah, unless you're the Chiefs. Look, it's a whole different conversation. We'll talk about it later. Right? We talk about these biases, though. Talk about the false consensus effect, right? Where we have the tendency to assume one's own beliefs, opinions, attributes, or behaviors are more widely shared by others than actually is.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Going back to what I was just saying, like base rate fallacy, you add this into there. I watch football. Most people watch football, right? I saw this movie. Everybody saw this movie. And then we draw conclusions, alternative conclusions about these things because our brain is just trying to process information. Not only that, we have so much coming at us that our brain is filtering it. It's like going through a colander, right? Yet we're just not aware of it. We think what we see is what is. And this is why, hey, I'm gonna put it out there. This is why diversity matters in the workforce. You cannot accomplish anything on your own to get the best possible outcome, because when you have diversity of thought, Daydream, diversity of thought project, you just get other people who see it differently. There's this great experiment that was done by this teacher, and I can't remember where because I wasn't prepared to talk about this. But she comes into her classroom and she manufactures this whole scene with a student, this conflict. And then she has every person, 31 different students, write a story about it. And you know what she got? 31 damn different versions of that story. Depended on where you were sitting in the classroom, what you could see, like all of the variables. And that's 31 different truths that are ultimately drawn just because of maybe where you were sitting in the classroom or just your life experience, or what, are you friends with this kid that came in with the manufacturer, or do you like this teacher or don't you like this teacher, or did you eat lunch or you didn't eat lunch, right? So many variables play. But anyway, I'm like on a roll here, G.
No, I love it. You get so excited and you like dip into a story. Well, you were talking about the biases, and I think that we didn't cover the other one that's important here is the appeal to probability, right? Like the way your brain kind of, this is the most likely thing that to have happened or happen is what's happening here, is to kind of short.
Right. The appeal to, like, dude, we think about the appeal to probability. This happens a lot in polling data, right? And Nate Silver, for those who used to be fans or are still fans, will say it 100 times. People are bad at understanding probability. When you do a predictive model that's based on statistical analysis of sentiment, and you come up with a probability that Hillary Clinton, 75% chance of winning the election, people take that as a Hillary Clinton's going to win the election. And there's still a 25% chance probability that Donald Trump wins it back in 2016. Like, that's significant because this is all about probability. And this kind of goes into our basic lack of ability to understand probability. Like, our brains aren't meant to look at 25 different things that happen to us in this moment and come up with a statistical average and figure out what is most likely to happen here, and then we're going to move about the world, right? It's meant to happen quickly. Right. So if I get into a car accident on Tuesday, I'm more likely to think that I'm going to get into a car accident Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and maybe for the next year, right? I've got to rewire my expectations and the conclusions just because, you know, if I see on TV that 4 people had their houses broken into last week, now the likelihood of my house getting broken into is much higher, when in reality it's not. This goes back to base rate fallacy, right? We don't consider the actual rate of occurrence. We do this in politics. Donald Trump won the election by 1.5 million people. He has a mandate. What about all the other people who didn't say yes? Right? We don't consider them because this is a democracy. Therefore, a win by a couple percentages is 100% victory, right? We don't think about it in those moments when we're arguing, when we're heightened, when we're having a discussion, when we're forming our beliefs, when we are actively evaluating our truth. We aren't fully considering all of these things because our brain is not wired to statistically analyze our environment. In fact, right, statistics is the last mathematical invention behind calculus, behind arithmetic, behind algebra, right? All of these things. Point. Now, the first average was calculated in the 9th century. Just the first average. Arithmetic was invented 3,000 years before Christ.
Right.
And it took us that much longer to just go, 1 + 1 + 1 is 3, divided by 3 is 1. Oh, so the average of these numbers is 1. No, we don't think like that. We don't process information. We process averages and statistics like we process algebra. No one on average is walking through life going, I guess A squared plus B squared equals C squared in this situation.
Unless they have like that beautiful mind thing going on where they do the trigonometry.
Hey, I am not Will Hunting. I would love to be Will Hunting. I am not an astrophysicist. Most of us aren't, right?
Right.
Where they can put numbers on boards and actually see stars.
So then, how do we navigate this sea of various truths, right? Like, there's something that we talk about in the More in Common process, and we've talked about on this show, like strongly held values, loosely held beliefs, right? Like knowing what you value, but being open to new information, being open to change your mind. But how do we as individuals kind of help ourselves be aware in these discussions as we experience other people navigating their own truth?
Dude, you want to talk about another cognitive bias? It's called the bias blind spot. We have the tendency to overassess the bias in others and believe that we don't have it, right? I'm not biased. You are, right? All of these things that we talk about today aren't just about the other people in your lives. They're about you too, right? So like that sentiment, which I absolutely love, is strongly held values, loosely held beliefs, isn't about like some of the most famous philosophers in our history have changed their philosophical stance over their lifetime multiple times, I think Dostoevsky changed like 3 times his baseline philosophical line of thinking. There's just a lot of information. And what we need to do, and this isn't just politics, as we always say. Like, this is anything where we're taking information and we're drawing a conclusion, whether it's the direction that we're going to go in a business decision, whether it's the restaurant that we're going to go out to tonight for dinner. Like, we need to evaluate our own facts to understand the conclusions that we're drawing and take other people's facts and try to understand the conclusions that they're drawing. The hardest example in this that I think demonstrates it so well goes back to the religious ideology, right? A person who has deeply held religious beliefs, spiritual beliefs, has a truth in that. Like, there is evidence that they have experienced in their life. And I know a lot of people like this who are very academic, very intelligent, very, like, I think Neil deGrasse Tyson broke this down. Like, I think the longer you go in academic achievement, the less likely you are to believe in God, unless you live in America. But nonetheless, like, there is a truth in that if you don't believe in God, you will not understand. And it is not for you to understand the truth that they experience. It's for you to understand this is meeting people where they are at its finest, that is their truth.
Mm-hmm.
Debating fundamentals like life after death and all of that other stuff there's no one that's going to win that argument. You're only going to win it for an audience. But if you're just having a conversation, it's actually more peaceful to seek further understanding of that experience than it is to try to argue that experience. And maybe be open to them giving you a new piece of data, evidence, fact, whatever it is, that may change your mind on the issue because you might be missing something. Right?
I think it's an important point to go back to what you were saying earlier. This is the strength of having diverse perspectives on a team, especially when there is established trust between the team members and people who come from their backgrounds with their history and their information to the situation. That bigger picture, that more encompassing truth. This is also why I don't believe, I've worked in entertainment most of my life. I think that it's a team sport, right? Like, if you get a film that the guy wrote, directed, starred in, acted in, and produced all by himself, it's like, well, that's his singular version of truth, right? Like, if there's no one else putting input on that, then it's like, yeah, how true can that ring to the audiences if no one else has contributed to the perspective that is being shared? So this diversity of thought and teams and collaboration is really what allows us to filter through some of our own biases around what is true.
Yeah, and it really, like, the foundational element of acknowledgement of self and recognizing, like, the elusiveness of truth. We see it online a lot. See it in punditry. It causes us to avoid conversations. And we're going to break down this NPR embedded series that recently was done because I think it embodies this. And there are some details in it that I really want to get into. So for anybody who wants us to do that, go listen to Embedded NPR podcast, the most recent 3 episodes. There's also an article out there about this reporter who's trying to reconcile with his dad around his conspiratorial viewpoints. Truth is elusive because we all approach it as if ours is it. Your truth is the truth. My truth is the truth. Don't you see these facts, data, this, and this? See how I'm right and you're wrong? It's hard as shit to unpack this emotional experience, especially when our brain is looking at it and going, this is simple because I need to survive, right? But if you can just try to reconcile the facts, like, hey, let's reconcile. Hey, you see a 9 here, I see a 6 here. Can we agree on that? We're looking at it differently, but that's what we're seeing, right? And if we want to move forward, let's agree on what perspective, and we'll put that little Uno line underneath it, right? Like which direction that we're going to be. But let's reconcile that just because it is your truth doesn't mean it's wrong. Could be wrong. Hey, look, that's the spirit of debate. Who's right, who's wrong. But if you start at the who's right and who's wrong point of view, you're missing a significant portion of what the other person is experiencing. And you're actually missing a significant portion of your own experience and what's possible. So trying to use that, right? Knowing, like, you know, truth is a thing, but it's also super variable, and try to accept that so you can navigate the space of these conflicts in a much more pragmatic way.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we always say takes practice. You may not get it on the first time, but if you're aware of it going in, I think that you can at least take the pause, take the time in to accept another's truth as their reality, even if you don't necessarily come to the same conclusion.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Look, if you like what we talk about as we wrap up this session, I think, G, you got one more thing to say.
No, I was gonna say wrap it up, Keith. Keith, tell him what you tell him.
We're on the same page. Continue is what you're saying.
Adelante.
moreincommonent.com. You can get to us that way. You can check out what we do with teams and leaders, and how Rodney, who's not on the show, uses D&D to improve team building efforts. Hit us up on X. Hit us up on Insta. Hit us up on Facebook. We're all there. More in Common Pod. And check us out on YouTube or your favorite podcast catcher. Like us, share us. If you think this is important, we're still trying to find our audience that will self-grow it. So,
send us comments. If you have topics or issues that you've encountered and you want to see how the more perspective might be able to help you navigate, we're open to it. Let us know what you think.
Yeah. Love it.
Right. This is the More in Common podcast. I'm Gerren Taylor. That is Keith Richardson. And we will see you next week.